So everyone, Australian Survivor is finally here. So let's do like a strategic breakdown of the episode and some of the different tactics that were used by different players and perhaps how things could have gone differently. But you know, this season of Survivor is actually a bit of a special one for me because I was one of the people who actually tried to get on the show. I obviously didn't get in. I got through to like round 2 or something and then I failed. But in the email that they sent me, it did say I was still in the top 10% of applicants in the country, which I actually don't believe. They probably just say that in every single email, just so that people don't feel bad, but nevertheless, it's there. Now, hopes are high with this season of Survivor. I think Australian Survivor of last season, for those of us who were like the hardcore followers of the show for a really, really long time, last season was a bit frustrating. They brought on a lot of people that aren't really big fans of the show. A lot of them had never seen the show before, and it was like watching an early season of the first or second season of the American one. You know, it was frustrating because you're like, oh come on, don't they understand? You got to strategize, but they were still sort of stuck in that old mentality of like, oh no, someone wants to strategize. You're a schemer. It's all about the tribe and loyalty, and I did a lot of yelling at the TV during that season of like, no, it isn't. It's not about loyalty at all, okay? It's about winning the money. And a couple of times throughout the season, I remember at one time, even the host John at one point in a tribal, he's like, don't you want to win? It's like, don't you want to win? You got to make moves. It's a TV show. Things need to happen. So that was a frustrating season. But looking at the cast and looking at some of the profiles, which we'll go into a bit more details in a second, it does seem they've remedied that this season. There's a lot more strategic thinkers. I do think, though, and it became apparent early on in this episode, that a lot of these strategic thinkers are muting their colors. They're trying really hard not to let on too soon that they're brains. They're trying not to let on that they're thinkers, that they're strategic players, because that'll put a target on their back. So at the beginning of the episode, everyone stuffing around in both tribes and not really building their camp properly because no one wants to sort of take up and be the leader and tell everyone what to do. Probably a justified concern. I mean, it's a tall poppy syndrome with Aussies, is if you start ordering people around, people won't like it and you get voted out very quickly. So hey, if you got to freeze in the night, you got to freeze in the night. That's just the way it is. I think a lot of the frustrated strategy players not speaking up was probably a good move. But Kent was the first one to give us a bit of a view of his game plan, which is spot the dickhead. As he said, if you look around and you can't find the dickhead of a group, it's probably you. And then Kent proceeded to not name a dickhead of the group, which means it's probably him. Considering how close he was to getting voted out at the end of the episode, yeah, Kent, by your own standards, you're a bit of a dickhead, mate. I still like you though, but I don't think you'll last very long in this game. Now Mark, there's actually 2 Marks. So for the sake of simplicity, I'll call this Mark True Blue, because he's like the true blue Aussie, and I'll call this Mark Josh Brolin, because come on, he's Josh Brolin. But Brolin is saying that he's not letting on that he's an SAS or was an SAS soldier. Again, good move. The survival skills will be great for him, but that makes him a threat to everyone else. I don't know how well he's going to be able to throw people off the scent, because I mean, just looking at him, it's so obvious that he's involved in some kind of work like that. And I don't necessarily think being in the military is as threatening as like being a cop. Like I've seen that in the American ones, a lot of cops don't want to let people know they're cops for good reason, because their whole job is like sussing people out. Army, not so much. So I don't think he needs to be that worried about it. In fact, his survival skills would actually make him more of an asset during the tribe part of it, like pre-merge. Post-merge, then it will become a liability because it would translate into individual challenges. But I actually think he should just go ahead and just tell everyone he's an SAS soldier and get the campfire going, fish for everyone, do all that stuff. Since the mentality of a lot of people in this season seems to be further back in Survivor history, they'd probably appreciate it more. I mean, if you tried to do that in the American one now, you'd probably get taken out pretty quickly. But since a lot of these players are sort of back in the evolution of the game, they'd appreciate it. But Henry's tactic of pretending to be a yoga instructor. This was one of the promos that they made for the show. I don't get it. How is pretending to be a yoga instructor in real life going to translate into winning Survivor on a TV show? I just don't see how that's going to work. I mean, there's only ever been one yoga instructor who's won Survivor, and that was like 12 years ago or something. So I don't quite get what he's trying to go for. But it shows he's at least capable of a bit of deception, and we need that. We need more deception. We need more schemers. Speaking of which, we had one of the classic sort of Survivor battles of the good old boy. The good old boy who believes in honesty and integrity and always telling the truth. And there he's up against this other whippersnapper who's a snake in the grass. Oh, I don't like those snake in the grass because I have no idea how Survivor is supposed to be played. I was actually hoping that their tribe would actually lose at Tribal Council because I wanted to see a bit of resolution to this struggle. I think these two are going to come head to head. Adam and True Blue, they're going to come head to head because they're the two different kinds of players. And I gotta tell you, like, Adam's a schemer, yeah, no doubt, but he doesn't seem to be very good at it. Like, everyone knows that he's a schemer, and that's fine. It's okay. But I could totally see True Blue next time they go to a tribal council telling everyone we have to vote out Adam. He's untrustworthy, snake in the grass, blah blah blah. You know, all the usual nonsense. And Adam probably will get voted out. But really, when you think about it, Adam's not dangerous at all because everybody knows he's a schemer. So he's not going to be able to convince anyone to do anything they don't want to do already. So he's not really dangerous. He's not really a threat. True Blue is very dangerous. He is the one that you really need to be worried about. Everyone's going to listen to him. He's going to be much more capable of influencing people because he can hide behind that mask of being the good old boy, being the True Blue. And often people like him who sort of pound their chests about how morally superior to everyone else they are because they don't want to play the deceptive part of the game, they're actually the ones who are playing the deceptive part of the game far worse than anyone else, and worse meaning more aggressively. And we saw that in the previous season too, is that the virtue signaling of like shaming anyone who wants to actually introduce some tactics and some strategy, that's a way for them to shut down all competition, and it's an effective strategy for them. It's by its nature incredibly hypocritical, so I think I have more respect for someone like Adam than someone like True Blue. But if I were Adam, or someone who wanted to keep Adam around, and True Blue was saying he needs to get voted out, that's what I'd say to my tribe. I'd be like, Adam doesn't have any real power. He can't convince us to do anything because we all know he's a schemer. True Blue has got us talking about doing this. That shows you he has far more control than Adam does, and I don't want him controlling my game. He's the real threat. We've got to vote out True Blue. That's what I try to convince everyone of. I just want to see that thinking in Australian Survivor get squashed because it's like we're so far past that with the American Survivor. I just want the psychology of the game to catch up with where it's at in America, you know? So we gotta squash that. I want to see True Blue eviscerated. I want to see him absolutely crushed so that we can just wipe our hands of that whole stupid honor and integrity thing in a fictional game. You know, it's yeah. But of course it didn't end up being Adam versus True Blue because their team won the challenge, so it became Joan versus Kent. Now we know in each episode that once a tribe loses the challenge, from there until tribal is the whole political side of the game. That was incredibly short in that episode, and that lends me to believe that there actually wasn't a whole lot of strategic thinking about this vote, and that's okay, it's only the first episode, doesn't have to be yet. But it seems like Joan really did just get voted out on the basis of we got to keep the tribe strong for challenges, and that's fine, you know, everyone's got to have a reason, it's only the first vote like I said. But that as well is really an outdated way of thinking, in my opinion at least. Because with all the tribe swaps and the switcheroos and trading people from tribe to tribe, with all that stuff that goes on, it actually doesn't matter if your tribe loses immunity and goes to tribal council a lot. That actually doesn't matter. Keeping the tribe strong in challenges means nothing if you're probably going to be switched over to the other tribe in a couple of days anyway. What matters is you keeping your alliance strong and removing threats. And I can't help but notice in previous seasons of Survivor, you know, there's always that one tribe that sucks at everything and loses all of their challenges, and sometimes it gets down to only like 2-3 people. There's only like 2-3 left. Those tribes that lose everything and keep going to tribal over and over, the people who are left at the end of that, when the merge happens, 9 times out of 10 they go on to at least be in the final 2 or the final 3, or make it all the way to the end. And I think it's because when you have a tribe that wins immunity all the time, they never have to go to tribal, so they don't know how to do that part of the game. So then when they finally do merge with the leftovers of the loser tribe, the people who are left over from the loser tribe, they've got like sharpened Wolverine ninja blade hands with that side of the game because they've been to tribal so many times. And I think that's why often the people from the losing team usually go on to win the game, because they've had more of a head start on that aspect of the game. on the scrambling and the scheming. So yeah, voting someone out because they don't help you in immunity challenges, I think is a total wasted opportunity to get rid of a threat. That's all you got to do. You got to get rid of threats. It doesn't matter about winning tribal challenges. Who cares? But when it comes down to Joan versus Kent, I do think that Kent seemed to play the social game a bit better. He seemed to have more of his finger on the pulse of what was going on in the tribe, whereas Joan seemed like she was asking people a lot of like, what's happening, what's going on, whereas with Kent, people would just include him. But I mean, the big knife in the back for Joan, like the final stab in the back, was of Sarah. And Joan herself said, as she was leaving, we all saw it, that she reckons Sarah is the number one threat in the game because she's ruthless, but she's nice enough that you trust her. And I gotta say, if I were to pick first episode, like who's gonna be the winner, just based off what the know-it-alls call the winner's edit. The fact that that made it into the show, that she was name-dropped like that, and looking at some of the stuff online where they've all mentioned about how great she is, and in the profiles, hers is the first profile they put there, saying that she's a heavy hitter. They definitely do seem to be building her up for something. Either she's going to win it, or she's going to be there till the end. Like, they're focusing a lot of attention on her, so just based off that alone, just based off the editing, and the way they seem to be structuring the show, if I were to bet on someone winning, I'd be betting on her. But of course, Joan doesn't know anything about any of the people in the other tribes, so there could be someone over there who's even better that she doesn't know about yet. And one contestant who I'm actually curious about and I think could be a contender, just based off what I've seen of her and just based off some of her profiles, is Jackie. She could be a serious threat. But, you know, we have to see more of the show. But as of right now, if I were to bet money, I'd bet on Sarah, just from the edit alone. But, you know, looking around at the guys, there doesn't really seem to be any number one contenders amongst the guys. And it was the same in last season too. There aren't really any good strategic guys. What is it with Australian guys? We're just not very good at that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be sister wars throughout this one, and the guys are just kind of going to be getting strung along as like pawns in the game. But be interesting to find out. Let me know in the comment section who your picks are to win and how you think the show will turn out, whether you're happy with it, whether you're disappointed with it. As I've said, I do think it will pick up. They've got more schemers in it this time. I think they're just trying to mute their colours a bit in the beginning so they don't get picked off early. But let me know what you thought, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the comments.